Persona 5 is probably one of the largest and most critically acclaimed JRPGs to come out in the last few years. And it's no surprise, Persona 5 features an alluring style, amazing OST, and a trusted series name. My only experience of Persona before 5 was Persona 4 Golden, and my relationship with that game was touch and go at points. We're all inflicted with fear.
No, don't get scared.
Are you fucking serious? What a pile of horse shit.
You need to senpai. No! Someone heal her!
What the fuck? I still loved the game. I was just kind of dumb and inexperienced. And depending on who you ask, I probably still am when it comes to turn-based combat. You see, Persona 4 Golden was the first game I ever beat that featured this combat style, and I jumped into Persona 5 Royal immediately after beating Persona 4 Golden. Before Persona 4, any turn-based game I attempted, I would eventually drop after only a few days. You could also say that I didn't really beat Persona 4 Golden because I failed the dialogue check at the hospital. This resulted in a premature neutral ending, and without realizing it, I entered New Game Plus and overwrote my game save, essentially locking me out of a third of the game unless I wanted to play through it again. Yeah, I'm still kinda salty about that. Anyway, now that you know my perspective and my background with the genre, let's get into the review. And as a side note, all of my footage is taken from the live streams I do on Twitch. Persona 5 Royal starts out with shit really hitting the fan. You've been taken into custody, and after getting roughed up by some agents, you start giving your account of events to a prosecutor named Sae Nijima. Most of Persona 5 takes place in the past, with the main character recounting those events. We'll call this poor guy Joker from now on, as that's his codename used in the game. He'll always be Tanjiro Otasaka to me because that's the name I gave him, being a combo of an anime I started and an anime I finished at the time I began playing. Before the events of Persona 5 began, Joker was wrongfully accused of assault after trying to protect a woman from a pestering drunk man. Because of this, you are now on probation and sent to an acquaintance of your parents, Sojiro Sakura, in Tokyo. Sojiro is the guardian figure in the story and doesn't offer Joker much in the way of a warm welcome. In fact, no one really does. Sojiro, teachers, and fellow students are always complaining about and spreading rumors about you in the first few hours of the game and beyond. I was experiencing basically tonal whiplash after coming from Persona 4 Golden, where you're welcomed with open arms.
Well, you're more handsome in person than in your photo. Welcome to Inaba. I'm Ryotaro Dojima. I'll be looking after you.
This is your room.
Don't spoil me.
I'll at least give you sheets for your bed. And
Fun of him.
behave yourself, all right? Don't get me wrong. I don't care what happens to you.
This is the teacher in charge of your class.
I dig her. I'm ready.
But really though, why me? There should have been better candidates.
This is a conversation to have when I'm out of the room. No one knows the truth, nor do they care to learn the truth about anything, which seems to be an overarching message in the game's plot. Thankfully, there's Ryuji, the first student the Joker has a noteworthy interaction with, also the first one to show him anything that could be called kindness. On your way to class, you discover an app on your phone that teleports you and Ryuji to a castle. After facing execution, Joker awakens to his persona Arsene. A persona is a manifestation of the user's personality, their inner rebel as referred to in Persona 5, and damn if he isn't beautiful. I can't tell which starter persona I liked the design of more, Izanagi or Arsene. But probably Izanagi, but only by a small margin. Joker and Ryuji can escape thanks to him awakening Arsene, and on the same trip the duo meets a talking cat named Morgana, who shows Joker the ropes of how to operate his persona and how to move about the castle and some of his general rules. On the same trip we also discover that Joker can harbor multiple personas, which is a unique ability bestowed unto him. Morgana also joins you in the real world later as a talking cat.
I was absorbing all the sunlight because I'm black. Don't you get it?
Eventually, Ryuji and another student named An awaken to both of their personas in the castle after a few trips into the metaverse, the realm that this castle exists in. This castle is what's referred to as a palace. A palace is the physical manifestation of how the palace owner views the world and people around them. Palaces form only to those whose desires have become distorted, so most palaces in the metaverse belong to terrible and evil people. At the end of every palace is the treasure, the source of the palace owner's distorted desires, and by stealing this treasure, it can cause a change of heart for the real-world variant of the palace owner. The owner of this castle happens to be Kamoshida, the school's men's volleyball coach. Kamoshida is known for abusing his pupils and pressuring other female students into performing explicit favors for him. But no one speaks up, not the authority of the school nor other students, effectively making Kamoshida the king of the school in his eyes, hence the castle-themed palace. With this newfound opportunity to ignite real change, the gang forms a group by the name of the Phantom Thieves of Hearts, with the goal of making evil people have a change of heart and publicly confess their crimes. This becomes Persona 5's main gameplay loop, with each castle in the game effectively serving as another chapter in the story. As the Phantom Thieves take on larger and larger targets, their own notoriety increases in kind, and as the story goes on, the Phantom Thieves gain more and more Persona users to assist with their cause. With this gameplay loop in place, there is an exciting feeling of escalation in the story with each palace entry, always knowing that something is going to go wrong at some point thanks to the opening we got in the beginning. The story of Persona 5 is incredibly good and told well for the most part. If you pay close attention to what the characters say and do, you can find moments in the dialogue that hint to future incidents or someone's true nature. There was only one palace story I found draining, and it was thanks to a shoehorned-in plot device with Morgana, that the writers must have felt they needed to inject extra conflict. Light spoilers here real quick, jump to this time if you really do not want spoilers for the mid-game. Alright, let's get started. The pointless conflict I mentioned surrounds Morgana, who after the addition of a character that effectively takes his role, he runs away because he doesn't feel like he has a place in the group anymore. And it's dumb because he obviously isn't pointless, even with the navigator role taken, because he still knows more about the metaverse and how it operates more than anyone else. But because of this, it basically ruins the arc for one of the soon-to-be Phantom Thief members by essentially stealing the limelight. And it sucks because without that dumb plot point, this palace would have had an exceptionally good and focused plot. This palace focuses on the character Haru and her father, who happens to be the palace's owner. Haru is to be married off to another man for political and financial gain, and this man happens to be a corrupt and perverted asshole that will likely make Haru's life misery for the rest of her life. And this husband is also in the palace, but he's the cognitive version of her soon-to-be husband, meaning this is only how her father views him in his mind. And this cognitive version is just as evil and perverted as he is in the real world, if not more.
Let's have fun. I'll play with you until I get bored. A high school music what it's around.
This means that poor Haru's own father knows how terrible he is and is fully aware of his intentions, and still plans to marry her off. My point in saying this is that I didn't notice that until after I had beat the game, because I was too irritated with the shitty shoehorn Morgana plot that I wasn't paying enough attention. Except for that one plot line though, Persona 5 tells an engaging and satisfying narrative. Persona 5 asks a lot of questions of the player, from how society at large reacts to events, how moral are the Phantom Thieves' actions, and the consequences of altering a person's cognition. Also, the additional story added in Royal is my favorite by a large margin, with it asking some of the most interesting questions of the player, and I loved the brief discussions I had with those in my chat during my playthrough. With my general opinion of Persona 5's story taken care of, I wanted to touch on the gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, I have little experience with turn-based games, so what did I think of Persona 5's combat? Well, I loved it, and I found it more engaging than a lot of non-turn-based games. The interface is quick and responsive to your inputs, and the menu and characters interact to your inputs in satisfying ways. Make me forget that the game was turn-based in the first place. The best way I could describe the feel for Persona 5's combat compared to similar games is that instead of feeling like an observer commanding characters to perform an action, I felt like I was the character doing the action. The bosses were enjoyable, except for one that I think was probably one of the worst boss fights ever made. Most of the bosses weren't too amazing or memorable, except for 2 or 3 boss fights that really stood out. But those that weren't were still carried by their style or the story surrounding it. I did find the stealth portion of the palaces to be a little bit underdeveloped and mindless. When you take cover, you're essentially invisible, so even if an enemy were in a position where they really should see you, they won't. I think they could have done a bit more there because I pretty much never got spotted and always had the opportunity to ambush the enemy. I've seen that a lot of people had complaints about the game being too easy. That isn't really a problem with me, I just want the game to be fun. I love From Software games like Dark Souls, but I also love Kirby. Maybe it's because I'm not very experienced with the genre, but I found the game to be challenging at times. That being said, after a few hours, I did start to see how overtuned some things are and how busted you can make personas. Near the end, I had a persona that would regenerate nearly half of my HP at the start of each turn, effectively making me unkillable unless you could take out half of my HP in one turn, which granted, some can. Holy Whisper restores 15% HP and 15% SP each turn. What the fuck am I created? It doesn't say it doesn't stack. But overall, even with its flaws, the combat system in place is incredibly enjoyable and makes me far more likely to revisit the game than something like Persona 4. Palaces and combat, though, are only half of what goes into Persona's formula. I wanted to touch real quick on the social elements. Unlike the combat, the social system in Persona 5 isn't too much different from Persona 4, mostly with just a sexier coat of paint. But there are still notable changes, and most of them good. Most characters that Joker interacts with will have their own story that's mostly isolated from the main plot. These are called confidants, of which there are 24 counting the 3 that Royal adds. Each confidant that I maxed out, I found myself really enjoying. For the most part, each confidant is about the character overcoming something about themselves and or the situation they're in. And with your attentiveness and your support, you help those characters reach their self-actualization. Of note, my favorite confidants were those for the Detective Prince Goro Akechi, Shogi Protege Hifumi Togo, Honor Student Gymnast Kasumi Yoshizawa, soft-spoken and scary at times Haru Okumura, Best Dad Sojiro Sakura, and the school counselor Takuto Maruki. You might notice that 3 out of 6 of the confidants mentioned are added from the Royal expansion. Yeah, all of the confidants added thanks to the Royal are amazing, most notable being Dr. Maruki's. There was 1 or 2 confidants that I never really started, and a couple that I didn't see to their conclusion due to the game's timing. One welcome addition to the Persona 5 confidants is that non-party member confidants grant you bonuses in and out of battle, such as better items available for purchase or weapon upgrades. Previously, all they did was help you make stronger personas, so unless the story was really good, you probably never did it. The downside is that you might have to engage in a character's story that you don't care for just to get a really valuable ability. Thankfully, this wasn't really the case for me, but the confidant system is very subjective. There's always something to do with your time in Persona 5, even if confidants are not available. You are always trying to improve yourself and your relationships inside and outside of battle, whether it be getting a job or taking time to clean Sojiro's cafe for a kindness boost. There is so much to do in the game's world that I felt spoiled for choice. But make sure you make the right choice because the game always has a ticking clock. And it's important that you choose the best option for the most gain if you want to maximize your effectiveness. I loved exploring the game's palaces as much as I enjoyed talking and forming bonds with those outside of the palaces. Persona 5 is a game without a fatal flaw, but it does find itself with a few rough moments and notable improvements that it could use. I really hope Atlus takes what they've learned from the success of Persona 5 and refines it because they really do have a winning formula at work here. Before I finish here, I wanted to mention a few things that I loved that I couldn't really find a place to mention it. The soundtrack is amazing, from relaxed music played in the cafe to upbeat and funky music played in combat. And pretty much each palace theme is noteworthy as well. Also, I adore this game's UI. Something as simple as the menu to purchase meds is alive and vibrant. I'm playing Persona 5 Strikers right now on Twitch, and Sophia's shop takes everything I loved about Persona 5's menu and cranks it to 11. I really did love this game, and from someone who could never really get into that combat style and didn't really like it in Persona 4, I have to say that Persona 5 was an amazing ride that I absolutely got my money's worth from. My next review coming up will likely be on Persona 5 Strikers once I finish it. In the meantime though, you could catch my stream if you want. The combat style is more of what I'm used to, and I'm really enjoying it. But anyway, thanks for watching, and let me know what you thought of Persona 5. And who was your best girl? It was Makoto.